They certainly don't have faith in Verloc. Maybe I shouldn't have trusted him.
You want your trolley? With all these chemicals lying around? You'll light up the whole factory. Where are you going to pry him out of his office then? Send a bouquet? We ought to just bring back Miss Boyle and get this... What in heaven's you doing, Miss Pig?
That's one power switch. One to go. Oh, that's very, very, very far down indeed. When all this is done, Tony Verloc and I are going to have a lick.
You stay out of this, Miss Bing. Nobody invites you.
Take no chances, lads. If they burn down this land, it's curtains for our entire civilization.
Attention! Attention! The constabulary is pleased to report that the beautification efforts hitherto taking place on these here premises have concluded satisfactorily. You may resume your regular course of workday activities. Off you go.
All's well that ends well, Dr. V. No need to thank us. Miss Bing! It's been too long.
You seem to be having a bit of a mutiny.
Oh, they do that. Not to worry, everything is very well in hand. Very promising lines of research. All sorts of...
I hope they haven't had one of your bad batches.
Oh, you're rather well informed. I can't just think faster, Miss Bing. I work until every thought is rubbish, and then I try to sleep. If I had Sally Boyle back...
I seriously doubt my father would return her to you.
I swear I am this close to a permanent solution. But even if it doesn't work, at some point, you know, we'll be down to a sustainable population.
That certainly is a permanent solution.
There's no food coming over the bridge, and we're not growing any. So how many of us are sustainable, Tony?
You seem a bit off, you know, a bit sad.
He wants to lock you up.
I've got a lovely pick-me-up.
Tony, I'm not someone you can throw into a cell like poor Mad Harry.
Yes, well, please go back and tell the executive committee I'll have a brilliant new formula presently.
He won't ever have a solution, will he?
Didn't you hear him? When enough people die, the rest will have food. Oh, you've got to get people off these ridiculous pills.
I'll never convince Father of that.
Oh, forget your damn father. It's a miracle he hasn't already run for the hills.
He's just lost hope. Everyone's let him down. You can't lead if no one will follow. I have to prove to him that people will be reasonable once they come off their joy. But they won't do it willingly.
Some of your father's soldiers became addicted to opium. Punishing them was no use, so he locked them up until they weren't addicted anymore.
Yes, I could cut off the joy to the whole island. All I have to do is shut down its allocator hub. Then Father will see people can come to their senses.
One island? Huh. I have never found half measures to be useful. They only make the oppressor angry.
That's the attitude that got you sent to prison.
That's the attitude that got me a country. What have you got?
Miss Bing? Dr. V would like you to come back. It's the water system. Those old pipes are contaminating the joy, you see. He's got some blueprints to show you.
Some other time, perhaps.
We won't take no for an answer.
Stop that! It's...
Damn it! It's after dark. The Bobbies won't care whose daughter I am if I'm breaking curfew.
I'd be more worried about the doctors. That man is desperate. He'll send every man he's got.
Past your bedtime.
I think I see the...
Trim. Thank you. You too. I love how we're all on a diet. I know. Everyone used to be so fat. It's unhealthy, you know?
a bit funny to you this morning?
What do you mean?
Just a bit off. It had a smell, I thought.
Well, it couldn't be off. Think of shoulder.
Surely there's nothing to worry about.
Of course not.
Uncle Jack would have warned us.
You must have imagined it.
It can't be anything to worry about.
Sorry, ma'am. I must confirm you're not conveying any...
You've already cleaned me out, Frankie. I'm as hungry as you are.
I can... Come on out.
Say goodnight.
Don't make me come find you.
What's that?
I'm so looking forward to the Battle of Flowers, aren't you?
Did you hear? The circus is coming to town.
You know, I think someone's looking for you.
The pill allocator ought to be on the other side of that canal.
What's that he's got there then? Some sort of toy? To think, he used to be the head of counterintelligence.
You never know who'll go down the next. Might be you. Might be me.
Ooh, I need to go spend a penny. Then we can book him proper.
That's Johnny Bolton. I thought he'd run off to the Garden District. He's got some sort of gun.
Calling Central. Come in.
I can't believe we built an elaborate system of pipes to allocate pills to the mood booths. Whose idea was that? I hope not mine.
Hey, what are you doing there? Get away with this!
Oh, shit, you!
Once you destroy this allocator,
then they will be willing to listen to reason, once they've calmed down.
You have such a touching faith in the common Englishman.
This is the third booth we've tried. They're never empty. How can they be empty?
I'm starting to feel rather down. Oh, I don't like this. Not at all. Hold on now. There's joy in the water pipes. Isn't there?
Yeah. Let's run home and make a nice cup of tea.
There's joy in the water. You really thought of everything, didn't you?
Oh, there was another riot this morning. A couple wouldn't stop talking about how they missed their little darlings, and why haven't the Russians sent them back?
They should take their joy. Nobody likes a downer.
You can't just wrap a pill in bacon and expect they'll swallow it. They're not dogs.
Put it in their tea, then.
What do you mean? Dose the sugar cubes?
Dose the water supply. Everyone drinks tea. You don't even have to tell them at first.
That is rather audacious, isn't it?
One must do one's duty. Even when it isn't pretty. Isn't that what you always say? Then I have to stop the joy from coming through the pipes, too. I have to smash the water treatment plant.
And all that accomplishes is cutting off the happy drugs to one island?
When they put you in charge of things, you don't have the luxury of idealism, Mother. You have to weigh how much you're going to hurt people.
Do you?
Well, it's getting late, isn't it? And it's time for all good citizens to be getting ready to go to bed. Would you like me to read you a bedtime story? Of course you would. Well, gather round, citizens, gather round, and I'll tell you a bedtime story. Tonight's story is called Little Red Riding Hood. Once, a young woman was told by her older sister to bring a pie and some milk to their mother, who lived in the forest. The young woman was known as Little Red Riding Hood because she was not very tall, and she liked to wear a red cloak that her mother had knitted for her because it went with her red hair and her red mouth. As she was walking through the forest, a wolf came up to her, for in those days wolves roamed free in the woods. The wolf asked her, "Hello, little English girl, where are you going?" Little Red Riding Hood was not afraid of wolves, and she had a very good knife in her basket. "I'm going to my mother's house in the woods," said Little Red Riding Hood. "Ah, which path are you taking?" asked the wolf. "The low road or the high road?" "The low road," said Little Red Riding Hood, for it was the shortest. "Ah, then we must part ways," said the wolf, "for I'm taking the high road." And Little Red Riding Hood took the low road, and the wolf took the high road. But the wolf could travel very fast when he wanted to. And though he was travelling on the high road, running up and down the ridges overlooking the forest, he reaches Little Red Riding Hood's mother's house long before Little Red Riding Hood was even in shouting distance, and while the sun was still high in the sky. "Knock, knock," said the wolf in a not very good imitation of Little Red Riding Hood's voice. "Who's there?" asked Little Red Riding Hood's mother. "It's the Little Red Riding Hood," said the wolf. "Well, you don't sound a little bit like my daughter," said Little Red Riding Hood's mother. I'm hoarse and out of breath, for I've been running away from the wolf who lives in the forest. Please, let me in, because I can see him coming for me." "Oh, no," said the wolf. "Well, you'd better come inside," said Little Red Riding Hood's mother, and she opened the door. And the wolf quickly cut her throat and poured her blood into a bottle. He ate most of her, but saved some of the juiciest cuts. These he sliced onto a platter, for he was very good with a knife, even for a wolf. Then the wolf put on the mother's pyjamas and got into bed. I'm afraid we've come to the end of our time. Tune in tomorrow evening, and I'll tell you the rest of the... Welcome to today's edition of Humour Hour, the show where you tell me jokes. Well, actually, I tell the jokes and you send them in. And the first joke comes from Winston Smith of Basingstoke Road. Let's see what Winston has to tell us. "Dear Uncle Jack, I love your show, especially Humour Hour, blah, 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 blah. And here's one for you that always cracks us up. Question, how can you tell a German from a pickle? Answer, you can't. You can't tell a German anything." Very good, Winston Smith. Thank you for that. You can't tell a German anything. And this one here is from Cyril Price of Wexley Crescent. Cyril Price. "My grandfather was a crack shot. Why, he shot 5 Germans, and that was only last year." Yes, I mean, you can never be too careful, can you? That's from Mr. Cyril Price of Wexley Crescent. Thank you, Cyril. It's very funny. Now, what do we have now? It's from... And now, it's time for I Hear You, the part of our show where Jack Worthing... Having trouble sleeping? Think it might be nice to take a walk down your street and take in the moon and stars? Well, get yourself into your kitchen and warm up a cup of milk and go take a look at the moon and the stars out of your window. It's not a bright idea to go out at night. Who knows what could happen in the fog? You could trip and hurt yourself. You could fall in a hole. Foggy Jack might get you. Of course, Foggy Jack doesn't really exist, but you can never be too careful. Take it from me, Jack Worthing. Stay inside until dawn and greet the bright new day. You'll be glad you did. Welcome to News Hour. All sorts of amazing things have been going on in Wellington Wells. I'm sure you must be as excited as I am to know about them. You may be surprised to know that a few silly people are still throwing out perfectly good meat scraps. Now, it's never a good idea to throw out food, especially meat. If you have a scrap of meat you don't want to eat or that's gone slightly off, then run it right down to your neighborhood butcher. They'll know what to do with it. and he'll be happy to buy it from you or exchange it for sausage, or even V-meat, yes. You'll be doing yourself a favour, and you'll be doing your patriotic Wellington Wells duty as well. And remember, my fellow Wellsians, V-meat may smell off on rainy days, but... Well, it's getting late, isn't it? It's time for all good citizens to be getting ready to go to bed. You don't want to be out after dark, do you? Would you like me to read you a bedtime story? Of course you would. Well, curl up in front of the telly and Uncle Jack will tell you a story. Tonight's story is called Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Once upon a time, there were 3 bears who lived in a house in the woods. They were called Henry Bear, Jane Bear, and Jane's father, Old Edward Bear. They had barely enough food to feed themselves, but it was enough. Every morning, Henry Bear had a big bowl of porridge because he was big, and Jane had a medium-sized bowl because she was medium-sized, and Old Edward Bear had a small bowl, for though he was wise, he was tiny and needed to preserve his strength, and he didn't need to eat that much either. And Henry had a big chair, and Jane had a medium-sized chair, and Old Edward had a small chair that was padded and very comfortable. And each of them had a bed to sleep in, a small bed for Old Edward Bear, and a medium-sized bed for Jane Bear, and a big bed for Henry Bear. Every morning, Jane Bear made porridge for the 3 of them, just enough so they would have energy throughout the day, and she gave them each their joy, 1 pill for Old Edward Bear, 2 for herself, and 3 for Big Henry Bear. They took their joy right away, of course, because they knew it's always best to start the day with joy. And then they would go out for a walk in the woods to find berries to put in their porridge while it cooled, because they knew that berries are very healthy in porridge. But one morning, while they were out, a young woman came by their house. Her name was Goldilocks, for she had golden hair, of which she was very proud. And she was always getting into mischief and causing her neighbours trouble, because she thought she was entitled to everything because of her pretty golden hair. Well, the 3 bears were sensible bears, and they'd locked up their house. It's always best to leave your house locked, because you can never be too careful. But when Goldilocks came by the bears' house one morning and noticed that the bears were not there, she said to herself, "What a nice house! I wonder what is in it." So she checked all the windows, and sure enough, one of the window latches was loose. Goldilocks said to herself, "Oh, stupid bears! They have not protected themselves so well." So she pried the window open and went into the bear's house, even though she did not belong there. And she found herself in front of the dining table. Now, Goldilocks was not particularly hungry, and she was used to much better food than porridge, but she believed that anything she could take belonged to her. So she decided to taste the porridge. First, she decided to sit in the large chair and try the large bowl. "Oh, this porridge is much too hot," she said to herself. Then she decided to sit in the small chair and try the small bowl. "Oh, this porridge is much too cold," she said to herself. So she decided to sit in the medium-sized chair and taste from the medium-sized bowl. "Oh, yum, it's perfect," she said to herself, and she ate up all the porridge in the bowl. Well, eating all that porridge made Goldilocks very sleepy. "I wonder what sort of beds these bears have," she said to herself. So she looked for the bedroom, and as the bears had a very small house, she found it right away. And she saw that there were 3 beds. At first, she tried the smallest bed, which was Old Edward Bear's bed, but this bed was much too small for her, and no matter how much she thrashed around, her feet hung out. So she tried the big bed, which was Henry Bear's, but the big bed was very high, and no matter where she rolled around in the bed, Goldilocks was afraid that she'd fall out while she was asleep. So she tried the medium-sized bed, which was Jane Bear's bed, And she said to herself, this is just right. I shall make this one my bed. And in no time at all, she was fast asleep. And I'm afraid we've come to the end of our time. Tune in again tomorrow evening, and I'll tell you the rest of the story. Well, it's getting late, isn't it? And it's time for all good citizens to hop into bed for the night. Would you like me to read you a bedtime story? Of course you would. I haven't finished the story of Hansel and Gretel. Well, snuggle up by your telly or radio, and I'll tell you how it ends. When we left Hansel and Gretel, their son had just abandoned them in the woods for the second time. But Hansel and Gretel had cleverly left a trail of breadcrumbs for them to find their way back. But it was a very hard winter, and starving birds had already pecked up all of the breadcrumbs, and snow began to fall, which covered up anything the birds had left. Hansel and Gretel could not find their way home. Instead, they only wandered deeper into the woods. After 3 days of trudging in the snow without anything to eat, they were on the verge of dying of exposure when they came upon a small house. A white bird stood upon the roof in spite of the snow, and now and then pecked at it. And so they realized that the entire house was made out of gingerbread, and the windows were made out of clear sugar. They were starving, of course, so Hansel helped himself to a chunk of the eaves, while Gretel broke off some of the window frame, which was made of frosting. And then a voice came from inside. "Nibble, nibble, little mouse. Who's nibbling at my house?" They answered, "It's only the wind which nibbles away at all things." But then Gretel poked her finger through the window in order to break off a piece of the clear sugar, and a witch suddenly came out of the house. Now, you see, they could tell she was a witch because she was beautiful and young. But she moved carefully, like someone who had once been old. Now, they expected her to be angry, but she was kind, or so she seemed. "You poor dears," she said, "come into my house and sit by the fire, and you can have all the gingerbread and cake you like." And they ate gingerbread and cake and pancakes, and soon they fell asleep, for they were exhausted. But the witch was only pretending to be kind to Hansel and Gretel. Really, she intended to cook and eat them. In fact, she had made the gingerbread house in order to lure someone to eat. For witches believe, I am told, that if you eat someone, you get their power. Hansel woke up in a cell. Welcome to today's edition of Well, 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 the show where we talk about how to be your physical best. Now, some of you dear listeners have been writing in about some sort of plague that's supposed to be going around Wellington Wells. Now, first of all, don't be ridiculous. If there were plague, wouldn't you expect to notice dead bodies in the streets strewn here and there? But you don't notice them, do you? But I want to address some of the wilder claims people have been writing to me about. For example, this chap, Constable Bill Blake of Trim Street, St. George's Home. And he writes that some of the wastrels have become